your mind, it's time to redefine. You're the spiritual quest, leaving the rest behind. Ungovernable, breaking through the status quo. We untamable, watch our spirit elevating consciousness. Yeah, we on the rise. No system can hold us down. We're reaching new heights, breaking through the chains, breaking through the wall. Ungovernable energy, watch the empire fall. Watching in the norm.
Happy Father's Day.
To you.
Yes. And to all the fathers out there. We have a fantastic episode tonight for Father's Day.
I think it's a good one for Father's Day.
Yes. And we didn't even plan it this way. I mean, it was just how the
accident
calendar worked out.
Well,
yeah.
I feel like you have taken our son to all the spots in New Jersey.
Well,
right?
not all of them.
A lot of the spots in New
a
Jersey
few. Yeah.
where they've had Bigfoot sightings.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's good. And
Yeah.
my dad used to watch all the stuff with our kids.
Oh, yeah. That's
he used
true.
to put it all on for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have
It's a dad thing.
an awesome guest to talk about so much.
Oh,
awesome
so
stuff
excited.
today.
I'm so excited.
As a reminder, if this is your first time viewing, this is Ungovernable. I'm Matt, and this is Jocelyn.
Yes. How does this relate to Ungovernable?
Well, we talk about literally anything we fucking want
Well,
to.
do you know what? You can't really govern spirits and all that kind of
Well,
stuff.
that is
So
that
this
is true.
a world of being not being governed.
They answer to a much different power than I don't want to answer to any powers really, but they're guided by something else. So, and we're gonna find out about it.
Yeah, we are. I'm so excited.
All right, so we have some technicality to get through here, and this is absolutely fantastic. I don't know, you're not really like a Socrates kind of person, are
No,
you?
but go for
Like
it.
Socrates, like
Well,
Encino Man, like or Bill and Ted's Wild
do you like Keanu Reeves?
Adventure. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So, oh God, this always kills me with the light.
It's because it's a white label.
Yeah. So the name is Socrates.
Socrates?
Well, it's French, so I don't know how you would say.
You do this every time.
Yes,
Mm.
I should probably look it up ahead of time one time.
I do like the picture.
Yes, but it's I guess a homage to Socrates. It is from France, like I said. It is 60% Marcelin
Is this dry
and
farm wine?
40% Cabernet. Yeah, it's
Dry farm wine?
always dry farm wines. Wow, that is killing me with the light. We got to figure that out. There you go. Anyway, all right. So you're going to pour. I'm going to read the bio. Our poor guest has been waiting for a while here.
So fun. I'm so excited.
So joining us this evening is Mark Hughes. Mark is also known as Mark the Medium, and he has a fantastic group on Facebook. It might even be more than that. I forget, but absolutely fantastic group called Mark's Unexplained World.
Yeah. Super cool.
Mark has been working with the paranormal for pretty much most of his life, which was first sparked off when, as a small child, he lived in a haunted house where he witnessed all sorts of strange phenomenon, including a spirit matron that visited not just his, but all the homes on the same street.
How do you explain that? I don't know how you even explain
Since
that.
then,
Like what?
since then, on his paranormal journey, well, you look at everyone and you're like, you're seeing this, right?
You have the backup. Right?
Since then, on his paranormal journey, he has witnessed all sorts of other strangeness, including UFOs, which we'll definitely talk about tonight, missing time, levitation,
Ooh.
a possible dogman, and a crying baby in the woods.
Oh my God, is that an
was
Irish thing?
heard but never found. Well,
That reminds me of Outlander.
You're thinking Scottish, and you're
Or
thinking about the
Scottish,
fairies or the wisps, right?
Yeah.
Today, he now works as a psychic medium and a podcaster. As a medium, he uses Rune Stones, oracle cards, which you're a fan of,
I
and
just got Dowsing Rod.
the occasional dowsing rod or pendulum. And as a podcaster, he writes and produces a weekly show called Mark's Unexplained World, which comes out every Monday afternoon/evening and looks into all sorts of strange phenomenon under the heading of the Unexplained.
I like that because I was thinking today about the word supernatural.
Mark, welcome.
Hello, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it is all our pleasure. And thank you for joining us from across the pond. This is absolutely fantastic. This is our first intercontinental. Is that the right word? Intracontinental? I always get that messed up.
I don't know.
International? Yeah, something like that.
International. Well, that's not exactly true because Michelle came to us from Canada.
Oh,
but
okay.
but that's kind of like, a technicality because it's
They're
just like
connected to us.
a couple miles away. So,
Yes.
welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. What part of England are you from? Are you near something that we would kind of know as a big landmark?
Yes. I suppose I'm actually in southern England. I'm outside probably the west of London. You've heard of London, obviously, City of London.
Yes.
And I live out in a small village out in the middle of the countryside called Knoll Hill. That's where I am currently at the moment. I've been here for just a couple of years. We moved a few years back. And I'm now retired. I enjoy working with spirit, doing mediumship. And I also practice things like Wicca and pagan rituals, things like that. And being out of the country is ideal for that sort of thing. So that's where I am at the moment.
I could imagine the hustle and bustle of the city gets in the way of some of that.
Well, it's not too bad where I am because, like I say, I'm trying to think. I'm probably about 20 miles away from London.
Okay.
So I'm nearer to a town called Reading, which is probably about 6 miles down the road from me. But where I am, it's literally surrounded by trees and countryside, so it's perfect, really. It is quiet. We do get a main road, and if the weather's blowing the wrong way, we will hear the cars. But 9 times out of 10, you just hear the birds and the animals and the plants growing, that sort of thing.
That sounds fantastic. We need to get that.
I would like to do that.
Yeah, we hear the cars and the planes constantly.
There's never silence.
Yeah.
There's never silence.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to ask you. Are you anywhere in relation to your childhood home that you grew up in, or is this something where you've moved away from there?
Sort of. Well, I mean, I was born in London, fairly enough, and then we lived in with my family. We lived in a very posh place called Windsor, with the castle and all that. That was very nice. And then, for whatever reason, family things, I think my mum and dad decided we were going to move up north. So we moved up north to a town called Bolton, which is in the north of England. And then we were there for a few years. My mum and dad realised that they missed being down south quite a lot. So, they went out of their way to try and move us back down south again. And we came back down to Reading. And then I grew up, got married. And we and my wife, we've lived in Windsor for quite a few years. And then now we're both retired, we've settled down on a nice little bungalow out in the countryside. So we've been about the country a bit. I have anyway. I think Linda, my wife Linda, she's mainly been down south, but I've been up north a few times.
So in all of those places you've lived, have you felt like the spiritual activity in all of the places, or do you feel more in the woods, or?
I probably feel more. I mean, the house I lived in up in Bolton, that was definitely haunted, and that was where I had my first happening, if you like. So, and it sort of took off from there, really. And I've managed to, being a medium as well, I've managed to sort of stay in contact with spirits and what have you, and my guides and everything that's helped me my work down here in the countryside where I am now. In Bolton, that's probably where I first really got into the paranormal, was up in Bolton. We lived in a house. It was a row of houses, a terrace house. It was on the end, and I used to get up for school in the morning. I was about 8 or 9 years old, maybe even 10, and I used to bedrooms back in the 70s was simply for teenagers or young children was literally just a bed and a wardrobe. You know, no television or games or anything like that. Yeah. Anyway, and I was getting ready for school one morning, and I used to use, because the wardrobe I had was brown, and it had a brown varnish finish to it. And I used to use that as like a reflection to make sure my hair was straight and the school tie was on. And one morning I was doing this, and I looked into the wardrobe, and I could see a reflection of a figure behind me. And I thought, I sort of looked. I remember it took me a few minutes to realise, what on earth is that? And thinking it might be one of my sisters that come in. I hadn't realised. I turned round. Of course, there was nothing there. And I looked again, and there was this figure in the reflection in the wardrobe, on the wardrobe door. And I just thought, oh, okay. And I went to school quite quickly that day. And like I say, it was in the morning. It wasn't at night when, you know, the witching hour or anything like that.
Right.
And this happened for quite some time. Every day I would see this figure. It got to a stage where I was too scared to look in the wardrobe door. I'd go to the bathroom and look in the mirror and there, saw myself out there. And then as time went on, I remember I went to bed one night and I was lying there trying to get to sleep. And all of a sudden I felt like someone was sitting on the edge of the bed. And I remember sort of, my sheet, because it was dark in the bed, my sheets were being pulled down from me, you know, and I could feel like this bulge or something on the end of the bed. And I was about, I'd say 9-10 years old, being absolutely petrified, I sort of went under the blankets, you know. I thought, no, it's not.
Yeah.
As you do at that age. And then one night, and this happened nearly every night or every other night. And one night I got really brave, and I thought, I know, I'm going to see what it is, see what's happening. And I managed to sort of make a small crack in the duvet and look. And on the end of the bed, I could see this large matron type woman just sat on the end of the bed. And so I could see like her outline through the light from the window, the bedroom. And I was absolutely petrified. And I just went straight back under. I thought, what on earth? Anyway, I must have fallen asleep. And the next morning, I said to my mother, because my mother was always into this sort of thing. And I said, I'm sure there was someone in my room last night and she had the attitude of, don't worry about it. I'm sure it's nothing, because she was very in tune to the spiritual realm as well. But she never used to sort of really advertise it, because back in the 70s, if you said you were in contact with spirits, they'd lock you away. That's how open-minded they were. Anyway, this happened for quite a few nights. One day, it was Christmas Eve. We were invited round to our neighbour's house for a few Christmas drinks. Well, my parents had the drinks, me and my sisters, and the other kids was sat in the kitchen eating bags of crisps and drinking out of Coca-Cola bottles. And all of a sudden, our neighbours I think they had 3 or 4 children, but 2 of them were too young, really. They're probably only about 5 or 6 to come down with the adults. They went to bed quite a while ago, a couple of hours ago. And then all of a sudden, there's all the neighbours in the room chatting and drinking and having a few laughs. And all of a sudden, you heard this almighty scream come from upstairs. And everybody's like, what was that? What was that? And one of the other children that was downstairs with us turned around and said, oh, Mum, I bet you can see that woman in his bedroom again. And everybody in that room just froze. And everybody could see them all looking at each other and say, oh, my God, you've seen her too. It was literally just dawned on everyone that we'd all seen this same woman coming into our bedrooms at night. Everybody pretty much sobered up quite quickly after that.
What?
But I suddenly, I don't know why, but I suddenly became more interested rather than scared. I suddenly had an attitude, oh, wow, so I'm not mad, I am seeing something. And somebody, I'm not so sure who it was now, but somebody did actually do some research and found out that the row of houses used to be a nursing home. You know, used to have OAPs in there, you know, and just sing out their final days before they, you know, sailed off. And it was just this nurse who just used to keep going up and down through all the houses on that row of terrace houses, and just watching people when they were asleep. But she didn't just watch people. What she also did, I think, once everybody got used to the idea that that row of houses was haunted, everybody started to make noises about, we've had stuff move in our house again. It was like, I don't know, it's like everybody suddenly gave her like a boost of energy or something. And all of a sudden, she wasn't mischievous or anything like that. She just wanted to, I'd say, help. Because my youngest sister, who was only a baby at the time, my mother had put her down for an afternoon nap in her cot, and with all her toys and cuddly bears and goodness knows what else. And then she'd go downstairs. She'd go up again about half an hour later after her nap, and all the toys would be on the floor in a circle, you know? So it was things like that, that all of a sudden, that all in that whole row of houses, about 6 or 7 houses, everybody was starting to witness all these things that were happening in all these houses.
Wow.
So we got sort of quite interested from that point on. That sort of what really gave me the bug, if you like, of ghosts and spirits and things like that. So I never really got scared, apart from that very first time. And I've had the odd little fright every now and then. But yeah, that's what got me into it. And that's the house up in Bolton. And that was a very strange house as well, because we had, like I say, we had all sorts of things going on. Even when we left home, the day we left there, we moved away from there. We couldn't find my trousers I packed up. We couldn't find them. We went up and I swore I put them in my suitcase or a suitcase to move, but we couldn't find them anywhere. We just put it down to, oh, well, it might have got thrown away. We might have packed them away without realizing. Anyway, our neighbour from Bolton phoned us up about a week later, because I'm not so sure how she did it, whether she was looking after the place until someone moved in, I don't know, but rung up my mother and said, I've just found your 3 pairs of trousers hanging on one of the bedroom doors. Do you want me to post them to you?
What?
Yeah. So, you know, I remember my mum turned around and she said to me, that was the house having the last laugh. That was.
Yeah.
She's probably right.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm full of questions, but I want to give you first crack at it.
That's all right.
What first came to mind hearing the story?
Oh no, I think the story is great. The first thing that came to mind was it mostly children that saw her on the street, or was it everybody, like adults and children?
Adults and no, I'm not saying everybody did see her. There was some people that never saw her, but it was those who did. That it could be little children or it could be adults. I think my mother said she saw her a couple of times, you know, and just down the road amongst those 7 houses.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just various people would see her just sitting in the kitchen or just look. You know, they'd look round and she'd be glaring at them, and of course they'd run out of the house in total fear, you know, and go back in, and she's gone. But she never hurt anybody or anything like that. I really feel that she was just an old lady or a nurse who was stuck here for whatever reason, and she just wanted to carry on doing her job, looking after people.
So you had mentioned that your mother was kind of in tune with, spirits or kind of that type of world, even when you were younger and before. How did she get into it? Did it come from her family, or did she have similar experiences?
She had similar experiences. My mother was actually adopted, but unfortunately, she never found out where she came from. I mean, she passed away a couple of years ago now, and unfortunately, she never found out. But she just always felt she was in tune to the spiritual realm. I remember the house that me and my wife lived in Cavendish Meads. We felt we had a spirit of a young girl there. And I thought I'd seen a young girl in that house, and I just put it down to, well, yeah, because by then I was a working man. I was looking after 3 kids. I was trying to earn money to, you know, spiritual realm was sort of not really part of my thing back then. But my mother came round one day and she said to me, there's a young girl sat on your rocking horse outside in the garden. And I thought, oh, right, okay. So, but my mother was always in tune to it, but she never wanted to make anything big out of it. She could have been a good medium if she really, if she really wanted to, because she was very good. She was another person who was really good at dowsing the pendulum, with the ring or something on the end. And she could tell you exactly where you've been without, if you went out and did things, you'd come back and she could get the pendulum and work out exactly where you were and what you did just by asking the pendulum to tell
That'd be
her.
rough
She was very
as a
good.
kid to have as a mom.
Oh yeah, that must have sucked as a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah. But but it was also at a time, I think, when that sort of thing, it just wasn't accepted as big as it is now.
Yeah.
I think if you were into that sort of thing, you were normally, I don't know, part of a gypsy, or you lived on the seafront of Blackpool or something like that with your cards and your table, and hoping people pay a few quid to do a tarot reading.
Yeah.
It was very much like that back then. So she never really got herself into it. But I did, and I think my sisters are probably both exactly the same, but they've got their own lives, they do what they want. But I myself, now I've retired, I retired a few years ago, I thought, no, I'm going to actually work on this now. Now I've got the time, and all the kids have left home and grown up and what have you. I can actually have some time for me. So that's what I did, and that's it. Sort of stemmed from there, and I found the more I got into it, even back then, the more I got into it, the more I was witnessing around various places I lived and moved to and things like that. I started to, I think you just suddenly become, I don't know, more aware, more open. The paranormal starts to become a bit more normal. It went on from there. It was all ghosts and spirits at that age. And then when I was about 12, 13, there was a program, you're probably too young to remember actually, it was an American drama or a science fiction drama called The Fantastic Journey, which was about a group of people that got lost in the Bermuda Triangle. I think it came out early 70s, something like that. And I was hooked on this program. It only lasted about 12 episodes. I think it was cancelled for whatever reason. And I remember saying to my mother again, what is the Bermuda Triangle? And she gave me a brief idea of what it was, and that things disappeared. Of course, I went down the library. This was before the internet, of course. I'd go down the library and I looked at these things called books, and I was reading them. And they're like a tree with words. And I looked into this, and
they're fantastic. I love them.
This is amazing. Anyway, sorry, I'm taking the mickey now. Anyway, so I went to the library, and of course I started reading the mysticism section or whatever about Flight 19, about the equinox, and all these strange things that had happened within the Bermuda Triangle. And I got hooked even more then. So it's like another branch, if you like. And then as I got older, I learned that there was actually more to the paranormal than just ghosts and spirits. And I started to get interested in the cryptids, and I started to witness some strange creatures in the forests and things like that. So it literally just all sort of snowballed. Everything was just coming at me as I grew older. And I think I sort of started becoming to the point where this is meant to happen, This is obviously what I'm meant to be doing with my life, because I was pretty crap at most of the jobs I had when I was working. But this is one I'm really passionate about and one I really enjoy, and I haven't been sacked at all, so I must be doing something right.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I have so many more questions. The next question that comes to mind is, have you ever gotten the opportunity to go back to that neighborhood and ask any of the, say, like the new entrants, or is the neighborhood even still there? I don't know, but have you been able to go back?
Enough, I did go back there about 5 years ago. I went to an old school reunion which was organised on Facebook. I met up with some of the guys I hadn't seen for about 30 or 40 years even. And I did go to, in fact, one of my mates from school actually took me round there. We had a look round there, but I didn't really want to knock on the door, and I was too scared to do that. You know, I thought somebody, you know, I don't know. I wasn't really that brave, but I did think about that when I was up there. It'd be lovely just to go in the house anyway, just to see what it looks like now. But obviously you can't really expect people to open their doors to a stranger. But no, as much as I wanted to find at the end of the terrace road, there was actually, or when I was originally lived up there, there was an old spa shop, you know, the local spa. Do you know what I mean when I say spa shop? Like a convenience shop.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or a small Sainsbury's or something like that. But unfortunately, because I thought, well, I could go in there and ask them, look, do you mind me asking? But it had changed into a Ladbrokes betting shop. So I thought, well, no, I'm not going to. It could have been Anne Summers' shop, and I really would have been screwed, you know?
Yeah.
I have definitely been in places because, like, in my college years, I was at University of the Arts, and part of there is old asylum for what they used to call deaf, dumb, and insane, right? Or what they used to call it. And so all the apartments that the freshmen went into, they all had the bars on the windows still, and like, so I definitely felt that, and that was not a nice feeling. They were not like, it was not happy. And then I worked at this restaurant right in for any of the Jersey people, the old Pierre's, where it was a very old house, and they had many generations of people that had died there. And everyone who worked there knew it was haunted. Like every one of us, we had seen things. Like it could literally, there were like, I think three ghosts that were everyone knew. And like one day we're just talking to someone who was running the podium, and all of a sudden he just flat out hit the floor, and you could see it was almost like he was pulled. But they liked to mess with him because he was very psychic. I've been in these situations. We're very and no one ever believes you. I have to say, no one ever, like, they all think you're crazy.
Skepticism comes with the territory, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
We just have to deal with it. But what I always find interesting is when you get like several people who have all experienced, who don't know each other, but they've all experienced the same thing. I find that really credible. You know, I mean, I've been in shops and things. Shops are probably the best because you always get a mixture of people coming in, you know, and they all several people would go up to the counter of one shop that I knew of and said, oh, you know, you've got an old tramp down on row 16 or something, you know, and eventually the people at the counter just say, yeah, don't worry about it, he'll go. But they know they've just seen the spirit, you know. And one place I've done a lot of ghost talks and ghost tours is a place over here called the Ostrich Inn. It's one of the most haunted inns in the UK. In fact, I think it's in the world actually. And the staff, I mean, there's such a massive turnover of staff because of all the strange things that are going on there. But the girl who works with the manager there, and she's great, really is down to earth about it. And when I've done the ghost tour, she's great because she says, if the guests want to come up and talk to me about anything I've said, I'm more than happy. Of course, they're all asking her questions. And they say, don't you get scared? And she said, no, not now. She said, because, you know, I mean, I sit here doing the counting up and all of a sudden, you know, something pulls my ponytail. And I think, oh, God, again. To get to that stage. Again.
Yeah.
I always find that quite intriguing when you do get people who never met all seeing the same thing at different times. I always think that's worthy of study, something like that.
Do you think that there are places on the earth or I mean more generally in the universe that these things are more apt to happen? Like, obviously people die everywhere, right? I mean, like there's literally billions of people throughout the history of the world that have passed away, many in very awful circumstances and things like that in places. And it just seems to be that there are certain areas where these things, these events or these kind of like contacts happen that are more frequent than in other areas.
Yeah.
I mean, are those portals or?
I mean, they talk about ley lines. I don't know that much about ley lines, actually. I know enough to say that where these ley lines cross or where they go through the land, is where most activity occurs. There's a place over here called the Ancient Ram Inn. I don't know if you've heard of it at all. Another very haunted building. And the reason why it's so active, I mean, I've been there several times. I've never had a duff night yet. It's always been active because they've got the ley lines that actually cross over. So as you say, it may be like a portal that they could just, spirits pop in and out. And the Ancient Ram Inn has its regular spirits there. There's one called I think the bishops. There's a couple of bishops that are there. There's one they just nicknamed the witch, and there's a couple of others. But they also get other spirits that just pop in and out. Like they just say, "Oh, what's going on here? Let's have a look." That literally just coming to see what's happening, and then go off to that's the one. Yeah,
I mean, it looks quite haunted from the outside.
Yeah, it is. The thing is, it looks like it's really low, but it's been there over 100 years now, I think. That they've actually built the road higher and higher, because they put new layers onto it, and every time they do, it goes higher and higher. And now, if you look out the bedroom at the top, you're literally looking at the surface of the road.
Oh yeah.
It is. I mean, if you ever do come over, I would highly recommend the Ancient Ram Inn. Very haunted building, and I think the reason why that is so haunted is because it's literally sat on the. So I'm just looking at the pictures at the same time. Yes, you've got the bishop's room with the 3 beds there.
Yeah.
We actually have you heard of the SLS camera?
Yes.
No.
Okay. It's a camera based on the Wii, and what it does is it picks out shapes and it turns them into stick men on your screen.
Really?
It's a brilliant camera. They used to be about £800, but now you can actually download it free on your phone. Whoa. So when I bought one, I may as well have literally just chucked 500 quid on the fire. And just
It's like an app you can get for your phone, SLS.
There's so many of them now. But anyway, sorry. You're showing the Ancient Ram in the pictures there. You have one picture of the beds in the bishop's room.
Mm-hmm.
We set up an SLS camera facing the beds, and we actually had the stick outline of what we think was a cat leaping from bed to bed.
Really?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, leaping from bed to bed. It was incredible. And then we used another app called a portal. Have you ever heard of the portal?
No.
And it's another app. You can download it. What it is, it's lots and lots of voices, all talking, but it's all backwards. And when you ask out to spirit to talk to you or communicate through the portal, it turns the words forwards in order to give you a coherent sentence. Yeah.
Wow. So it's like a translation.
I'm looking this up.
Yeah. It's like a conduit translator. I don't know why I didn't say that.
Yeah.
But the weird thing was, we got the portal out afterwards, and I asked the question straight: is there, spirit? Is there a cat in this room? And we actually got a meow on the portal, and I can't work out how that happened because there's nothing backwards on there to represent a meow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was an incredible thing. And also, so when I'm talking about a portal, we did I did a ghost tour for in the Nottingham Caves over here. And we had a young girl who was working with me at the time. She was Dutch, if I remember rightly. She was doing some sort of thesis on ghost hunting, and she asked if she could come along and see if she could, make some sense of her homework. I invited her along. Anyway, she got hold of this portal. She was very skeptical, which can be a good thing. And I said to her, "So look, why don't you ask something in your own language and see what it says? See if we get anything." Thinking, I doubt anything will happen. And she spoke to it in her own language. I think it was Belgium or something. And it actually replied to her in her language. And she did it twice, and then she said, "No, I'm not doing that anymore."
Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah.
So, Mark, what have you done?
Yeah.
But
I think that will
was
totally
just-
be your reaction too.
Oh, I totally believe in this stuff, but when it's actually there and I can feel it, unless it's
Yeah.
my parents, right? Unless it's like
Yeah.
my ancestors and my parents, like if it's something that I don't know or understand, I'm
Yeah.
fucking out of there. I'll see you. I'll be back later. Unless I have, someone there with me. Then I'm like, I'll be brave.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so there is some really good kit, but some good stuff out there. But I think a lot of it, sort of getting back to what you were originally saying, I don't know, the jury's still out on how ghosts and spirits appear, isn't it, really? I mean,
Yeah.
your ghost is like your replay, isn't it? The ghost is like the white lady that walks through the walls and then just walks through another wall. And it's like a replay of something she did hundreds of years ago. But the spirit, of course, is the one that interacts. I remember once I was working with a spirit, with another medium, and we actually saw something that was quite phenomenal. We actually, it was a Dagenham Museum. Yes, that's right, it was. And we saw this spirit, this ghost that was literally just continually running up and down the stairs. Oh, sorry, it was running down the stairs, disappeared, reappeared again, went down the stairs, and it just kept doing this movement over and over. And we found out that many people, guests, visitors, had seen this thing that me and this other medium actually were picking up on. And one night we actually picked up on the spirit of the ghost that was running up and down the stairs. And this spirit was watching himself running up and down the stairs. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah. And some really it does. To me, it absolutely does.
So
yeah,
meaning
the action is taken.
Meaning
right?
the ghost is kind of like an echo.
That's
but
right.
But the spirit is actually like an entity.
That's it. Yeah, the spirit is the one that interacts. And he saw himself running down the stairs constantly. It was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. Every time I do something, dealing with the paranormal, I always think, how can I top this? What's going to top this? This seems to come along. And every time I think, I think this is why it happens, I'm proved wrong. I wish I had a clear answer, but it's fun trying to find out, I think.
Can I, so when you go and you're like, would you call it ghost hunting? I don't know if I would.
Yeah, ghost tours, ghost hunting, that sort of thing.
Do you because you're a medium as well, do you actually try to communicate and do you speak to or try to help? Do you ever try to help the spirit or?
Yeah, I mean, what I do, I mean, some people get the wrong idea of mediums. They think that we see spirits like we see each other, and it's not quite like that. You tend to see the images that come into what they call your third eye, and it's like a feeling that you get. I always say it's what you feel, not what you think. And it's like I suppose if you're dealing with, let's say, a dangerous spirit, you'll get a feeling of, no, this isn't right. This doesn't feel right. And then you get the images of why you're feeling like that and the image of the spirit that's actually in the room at the time. And sometimes I do talk to them, and I'll talk to them out loud. I've got used to that now. And so yes, that's basically it. I do see them, but I see the images in my head. I usually see the images first, and then when I'll either start to feel really, I suppose, empathic, isn't it? You're feeling what the spirit is feeling, and this is not how I'm feeling. This is how the spirit is feeling. And if it feels anger or happiness or something like that, then you can interpret that. And I've also found that the more you talk about what you're feeling, the more information comes to you.
Oh, that's
interesting. So eventually, I can then build that. I can see the character of the spirit that's actually talking to me or showing me the images. And spirits are very good because they seem to know that someone, him, that's who I want to talk to. He's the one. And they seem to know that, you've got this gift. That's why some people, children, they see their imaginary friends, or they'll see a spirit. Of course, it petrified them. But the spirit knows, but that little kid, that's the one that wants to, who I can talk to. They just seem to know.
I love that idea that when you start to speak to what you're feeling, it allows for more to come in. I think that's a really key point right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
You've got to have an open mind when you do this sort of thing, you know. And I think the more you open your mind, I mean, I'm not right every single time. Well, I should be, but I'm not. You know, sometimes I have got it a little bit skew with. But what happens sometimes, you get two spirits, and then you get a bit of a mixed message, and that's quite difficult to segregate. And what can also happen as a medium, if you're dealing with a crowd of people, and let's say you've got 30 people in front of you, you're trying to sort of connect in spirit, sometimes you'll connect on, because I'm empathic, you'll connect on somebody who's had a really shit day. Do you know what I mean? So you've probably got somebody in the crowd who's had a really crap day. They've fallen out with their other half, and they goodness knows what else. And I'll suddenly start talking about, this person's had a really bad argument today, but I'm not so sure who it is. And then one guest actually came up to me during a coffee break and said, that was me. I had an argument with my other half today. Did you know? So
Wow.
it's just something you learn as you go along. You know, I then sort of took that on board and thought, right, I've got to be a bit careful, because obviously you've got 30 people out here for a night out. You really don't want to start blurting out their private affairs in front of everyone. So I have to be a little bit careful on what I'm picking up. But
yeah,
you live and learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to keep asking you about like specific instances, but I'm drawn to ask you more something that's kind of like philosophical in a sense, right? So like you had mentioned the fact that kind of the ghost, so to speak, is the echo or something akin to that, or a replay, right? And the spirit being the actual entity. Where do you kind of like, or do you even contemplate, you know, is this something that, you know, people have advanced this idea of, say, like infinite parallel universes that end up crossing, or different type of instances of the same existence that just seem to kind of maybe interact with each other? Like, have you even thought about that, or is it just something where you kind of like
it is something I've thought about, actually, because I'm very much into living in the Matrix type stuff. Very much into that. And there's a book by a man called, I don't know if you've heard of him, called David Icke.
Yes, yeah, I'm a big fan of David Icke.
Yeah, the man is so ahead of his time. I mean, his books lately seem to be a bit more anger than they used to be.
Well, I can't blame him, but yeah.
Really, but when you read, I mean, some of his books, he wrote a book called The Children of the Matrix, and it's a absolutely fascinating read. I don't know when it was, must be about 20, 30 years old now when he wrote that. And it's one of the things that made me think, and he says, I think it's in that book, I think it is, about, he believes that what mediums see is a bleed through from a parallel dimension. That's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the Children of the Matrix. Yeah.
Yep.
I've
Yeah.
not read this, and now I feel like it's going to go on my list.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating read. You won't. I mean, the first book I read of his. I mean, I've got more here. What's it called?
I'm putting it on right now. I have like so many books that do this to me.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm exactly the same. I got one book. It's called Everything You Need to Know, but We're Too Afraid to Ask. That was the first book I read of his, and after I read it, I've never looked at the world the same way again since. You know, it is.
What's
fascinating stuff.
What's absolutely incredible is a number of people that had come from, like you explained, in the 70s and 80s. If you had mentioned that you were in this kind of spiritual world, or you were a ghost hunter, you were, you know, someone who is kind of like into whatever, being a medium and that kind of thing, you would have been shunned or laughed at or ostracized. And what's crazy is within the last maybe 5 years, we've found out how important those people are, because we found out that so much, like in this idea of the Matrix, we found out that so many things are lies, and they're lies perpetrated by the people that are in the here and now, and the people that were the most tuned into the possibility of these things that are beyond were the ones that were like, immediately, they were like, that's bullshit, right? Like, almost incredible. Like the moment it
They all
happened.
talk about the Matrix.
Because like talk of like David Icke and Corbett is another one of them, right? Like
Patterson's on. Is it Jordan Patterson? He's another one as well. He
Peterson?
Peterson's you're talking about the
psychologist,
the professor, from Canada, from where was the University of Montreal, something like that. Yeah, but I mean, Peterson's a little less spiritual. He's more kind of like, I don't even know if he's religious, but I think like a lot of these people, and it didn't even have to do with spirituality. It had to do with just people that thought different than everyone else. And a lot of folks, marginalized them or ostracized them because of it.
You know who broke the mold?
Who's that?
Shirley MacLaine.
Oh,
she came out. Well, she came out in like the 80s, right?
Well,
like all big, yeah.
Are you familiar with Shirley MacLaine, Mark?
Yes, I am.
Of course he is.
All right. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here.
Well, she broke the mold. She like brought in that new age piece, and she was well known at the time. Like she. Yeah.
Well, no, it was, but yeah, I mean, in that vein, like it sounds like you have at least some semblance of a construct that you're thinking about in terms of, multiple iterations of existence that are kind of like in parallel or at the same time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did read, is it Elon Musk? He's actually paying scientists to find out how the Matrix works. I read something quite a while back now. I think
you got me Googling, Mark.
So can I ask you a question? So here's my question, because in a lot of the like spiritual world, people talk about 3D, 4D, and 5D and the shifting of the timelines.
Oh yeah.
Can you speak to any of that, or?
I'll be honest, it's probably a little bit above my head, some of that, but I do know the basics. I mean, I always think of the Matrix as we're all in like a video game or something like that. That's the way I always see it. I mean, if you think about it, in the early 80s, I don't know if you were around when Atari first came out, the first video game, and there were the two lines that go up and down, and the dot would go backwards and forwards, and we were just absolutely stunned at these graphics. How sad we were.
Oh my God, yes. I remember I could make an apple out of X's and O's or ones and twos, and it would flash on our very first Apple computer.
I was anyway, sorry. But of course, what every computer company is trying to do is they're trying to make the graphics like you or I now. That is their aim, isn't it? And let's face it, they're getting there. I mean, I see my son, not now, obviously he's moved away, but I remember seeing my son on some of these war games, and the graphics were incredible. I thought he was watching the television, Yeah. And with AIs and AI bots and things like that, we're pretty much there. And I just think that we, if you like, are in a graphic simulation. And we are the characters in this simulation. I always remember when I used to play the Wii with my son, and I'd say to him, we created our own characters, and we'd be going for a jog in the woods and what have you. And I remember saying to him, where are these other characters? Who are they? Because there was lots of other cartoon characters as well. And he just said, they're just, the Wii puts them there, and they will interact with you, but they interact by using an algorithm, because they know what you're going to do. And if you think about it, that's what we do all the time. When we go into a shop, people move out of our way, or people get on with their lives. And I think we are so similar to what goes on in some of these computer games, especially where there's lots and lots of characters. Yeah. And they're all interacting with each other because they all work on an algorithm. And I think that we are, again, this is just my opinion, and hey, there you go. But I think that's what we're part of. And if you think of how many computer screens there are in the world, how many graphic cards there are, that's how I believe we are living in alternate timelines or alternate dimensions.
Well,
every now and then we probably cross over.
Hold on. Which direction are you going in?
I was going to say, just a quick thing. Often when people speak of the living in 3D, they speak of it as a simulation. So that's just something that's, I think, very synonymous.
So hold on. This is okay. I thought we were going to be talking about one thing. We were talking about something like 10x better. This is freaking fantastic. Okay, hold on. So the first thing I need to do is I have to share this because I never saw
Elon
this.
Musk.
And this is from 2016. Okay. In 2016, the title is Tech Billionaires Convinced We Live in the Matrix Are Secretly Funding Scientists to Help Break Us Out of It. Many of the world's richest and most powerful people, including Elon and Bank of America. Wait, that's can't be right. And Bank of America. Well, I guess if there's money to be made in breaking out of the simulation, Bank of America is going to be involved in it. Think that we live in a simulation of the real world. Okay, so
must be what I saw.
That article is in the Independent. So if you want to go read it, you can go check it out. My mind is like 3 steps ahead now. So my next thought here is everyone assumes that because they try and relate things to what they've seen or what they've experienced, right? And so when someone says like we live in 3D or the Matrix or whatever you want to call it, right? They assume that like, oh, someone means that we're all hooked up physically somewhere to a computer, we're drugged and we have our eyes closed and we're living this thing out. It never made more sense to me than at present when people started talking about it in terms of the fact that, no, you don't have to be connected to anything. There's literally, non-physical connections that happen in our everyday, whether it be, media or like you talked about the computer screens and the games that we interact and things like that, that hook us in to the Matrix, right? And so I think a lot of people find it an easier analogy to think that they're physically connected. But really, at the end of the day, they could potentially be spiritually and mentally connected to the Matrix without necessarily all of the hardware, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I make sure just so I can make sure I actually talking on the same page. So they would be operating with on their own algorithm, or is that what you mean? If they're disconnected, it would be like an algorithm that's making them do what they do and making them interact with other people, other characters.
So
in media.
So think about it this way. I've had this brought up to me multiple times within the last couple of months. I've had multiple people now, whether they be directly connected with me or like influencers that I follow, talk about the fact that they believe that some people that live amongst us, that we perceive live amongst us, are just kind of like placeholders, right? That they are a shell and there's some baseline programming, and it's entirely possible that they're wrong in that the person is actually an entity, but they're maybe just not as far along, right, in terms of their experience of this existence as other people are, right? Or maybe, in light of kind of like what you're involved in, maybe they're just not open and they're not able to absorb enough to be able to be open and kind of experience life the same way. And then
they become cogs too of the algorithm.
Well, what I'm saying is that everyone, to some extent, they're hooked in, but it's not a physical being hooked in.
Yeah, it's not in the back of your neck.
It's spiritual or metaphysical or mentally hooked in to, this overall matrix. And, things like corporate media, things like propaganda, things like subliminal advertising and programming and things like that, right? Like,
and what's fed to you?
All the best parts of 1984, right, are basically not a physical demand on people.
Yeah, it's as you say, it's a spiritual connection. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the film The Matrix, the first one, they had that spot on. I think they had that pretty much spot on. Once Neo, I think that was the name of the guy, once he realized who he was and what he could do absolutely anything he wanted within that matrix.
Yeah, and the moment he realized that, they had to destroy him, right? Like, it's like now I'm like, is Alex Jones Neo? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Alex Jones is not Neo. But that just kind of, that does make sense to me from just a purely almost kind of like an academic idea of 1 + 1 = 2. If these people that are more tapped into the spiritual and metaphysical are able to see the things happening in real time and call them out for what they are, it just makes sense that there's at least some level of the spiritual and metaphysical that are included within, those manipulations or those control mechanisms or whatever is going on behind the scenes.
I agree. I also think, one thing I have learned over the years doing the mediumship work is most people who are connected to the matrix or whatever you want to call it are people who have had mental health issues. And they say the reason why some of them have these issues is because they see the world for what it really is. And they're being told, no, you're not. No, this is how it is. And of course, it goes against everything that they feel and believe in.
They looked into the void, right?
Yeah. And because they're being forced to think a different way, it's not easy as switching a light off or anything like that. It's a real tug, I knew of a doctor, a really nice guy, a fellow ufologist. He went through hell. He went through medical school, and he got all his doctorate, all his qualifications to become a GP, and he was a scientist. However, he was also a medium. He was a natural medium, and he would hear voices. That clients would come into his GP surgery, and he would hear voices or feelings or see what was wrong with that person before they sat down. And he first thought he was just going crazy, or he's having daydreams or nightmares and what have you. And he went to see someone, and they actually said to him off the record, "Why don't you go and have a chat with a spiritualist or something like that?" And he thought, "Well, I'm a scientist. I don't believe in all that." But he went because he wanted to find out what was going on. And he sat down, and this spiritual person, whatever, told him, "You are a natural medium. That's why you're seeing all this. You are a natural medium." And he struggled with this because he spent the last 40 years being trained to tick boxes, trained to rely on what was in front of him as evidence and not what he was feeling. And he really went through hell, coming to terms with the fact that everything he'd been shown wasn't wrong, but he didn't need that 100% in order to do his job. He actually found that he's got used to it now, and he understands it now because he went for a little bit of training. He was a bit sort of reluctant at first, but he wanted to get rid of what was happening to him. And after they trained him, he now uses it to his full advantage. He doesn't rely on it, when it comes to doing the medication and things like that. But it certainly helps him when they sit down and they tell him, they say to him, "I've got a bad back," and he'll automatically, his guides or something will tell him, "Yeah, I can see. I think I know what might be wrong with that." And 9 times out of 10, he's been correct because he's now started to use his own instincts as well as ticking the boxes. And he went through real trauma to get to where he's fine now. He's got used to it, but it took him a long time to just change the way he was thinking.
Well, that's we talk about that all the time. To be able to conceptualize that everything is not the way that it is. It could literally destroy you.
Well, we've talked about it, like if you have been given, like we talk about it with vaccines. If you've given your child a full vaccine schedule, if you admit that vaccines cause problems that kill children, that give them lifelong problems,
even minor ones,
even the minor ones, then you admit that you may have done harm to your child, and so that's like an entire. That's like mind blown. How can you do that? So I think a lot of people just shut their eyes because they don't want to take part and admit that maybe that might have been something. Not that they did it on purpose, right? Not that we're.
No, that's right.
There's like a coming to terms with that.
Yes. Yes, of course. That's actually, I'd not thought of it like that before, but that's a very interesting point of view. Actually, I'm just sort of thinking, why?
It's interesting too, because I study soul shamanism, and one of the books I read was called Entering the Circle. I forget the author, Olga something. And she was a shaman, but she worked in a psychiatric hospital in Russia. And there is where, and she would talk about how people with massive mental illness were actually in the middle of having these crisis, like spiritual, so like opening up to the world. And so she actually started there in the hospital, in the mental, like the state mental hospital. And that's where she developed her skills as a shaman. Really fascinating.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. You have to send me the link to that. I'll have to go onto that.
Yeah, it's called Entering the Circle.
You know, I can see more money.
Yeah,
I know.
Right?
I'm buying the other book. You can buy that one.
Yeah.
It's actually a wonderful read. A wonderful read. You would love it. You would love it.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
And send me the link if you remember. Send me the link.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I'll have a look. Yeah, that sounds quite fascinating. I mean, it kills me sometimes because you've got the like big CEOs and directors, and they've spent. When I've done ghost tours, the most skeptical people are the ones who run their own big companies, you know, and they see it as nonsense because they're busy. They tick boxes and they count numbers, and the numbers tell him, you know. But I find it ironic because a lot of CEOs and big company directors, when they make decisions, they're not going to tell me they do it based on the final figure. Their own intuition, their own instincts must be telling them, should I do that or not?
Right?
Tons of Fortune 500 CEOs, they live by the idea that before they make a huge decision, they typically take a trip and they get away from the everyday rigors of their job. And a lot of time it's isolation. It's an island. It's the woods. It's something like that before they come back and make that decision. Right. And if that does not scream that they're trying to find that balance to get all of that noise out of the way in order to be able to kind of get to some kind of inspiration or you know, intuition. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I've derailed the entire conversation.
I don't know,
but
no. I think the idea of a matrix is everywhere, and a lot of people speak of it, and they speak of it in different ways, 3D, 4D, 5D, or like a simulation. I feel like it's everywhere, and a lot of people talk a lot about activation and ascension to move out of it. I mean, a great question is what do you have any tips on like getting out of the matrix or like waking up to the...
Oh yeah, do you do like any exercises?
I do meditate.
Meditation.
I do meditate. I've got very good at meditation. I've been meditating for quite a few years. I try and do at least one meditation session a day, about 10 minutes long. But sometimes they've gone for about 30, 40 minutes because once you get into real deep meditation, time is just irrelevant, really. You have to, I mean, I have an alarm and sometimes I forget to put it on after 10 minutes and I've suddenly found an hour's gone by. It just doesn't feel like that hour, you know. Luckily where I live now, I mean, I've got a great big long back garden and I mean, it's dark now obviously, so I can't show you, but right down the end, I mean, my wife takes care of the first part of the garden because it's all perfect flowers, daisies, goodness knows what else, and it looks really good. But right down in my part, we put like a big fence along it and a gate, and I've literally just let it grow wild, and I've got a nice little pathway, and I've put a park bench there, and I just once I close the gate, I could just go in literally about another, I don't know, 10, 15 feet, and I find my park bench, and when I meditate, I literally feel like I'm in the middle of a forest or something like that.
That's nice.
Because where I go, it's just trees, bushes, and overgrown nettles and wildflowers, which I put in there to add a bit of colour. But my wife thinks I'm just being lazy, not looking after it properly. But it's exactly how I want it. I want it wild. I want it to be natural. So
it's interesting that you say the park bench piece.
Hold on. Do you go barefoot?
No.
No.
Oh, you should go barefoot.
No. Well, I'll tell you what I do. I mean, oh no! I'll tell you what I do. When I get to my park bench, I do take my shoes off. I don't take my socks off because creepy crawlies.
You can leave your socks on.
No, I do. When I go up there, I do take my shoes off, and I'm in my socks. You know, so I'm sort of semi there. But I don't take my socks completely. You know, I have
It's interesting that you have a park bench, because when I was studying the Akashic Records and getting trained to work in the Akashic Records, one of the things somebody that in my class had done was they'd be someone who lost souls attached to in their energy. And so she started to put a park bench out in her because it was pulling on her energy, and it was great. She was empathetic, so she was feeling things from the lost souls that attached to her. So she would have this park bench outside, and she had invited any lost souls to wait there, because she would once a day she would release them back. Like she would call in their soul family, call in their soul light to go. And she said when she put the park bench in, it was like day and night. She was like, I feel like myself again. And it had been so long that she had felt that, but it was a park bench that she did.
Yeah.
Super cool.
In Japan, it's either Japan or China. I can't remember. I think it's Japan. They have a thing where I mean, the garden. I mean, I've never been to Japan, but the photographs I've seen of the gardens, the hanging gardens, and they are just absolutely spectacular. Of course, over there, they meditate every day. They do all the shaman stuff, you know. But one of the things they do, and I've actually thought of doing it myself here, is they have a thing called an airphone. Do you ever heard of that? Airphone? You can type it in. I'll watch. What it is it's just a phone box in the middle of the garden with a phone, but it's not connected to anything. And when people have had a bad day, or they just want to talk to a loved one, they go to the airphone and they just talk down it. You know, they just talk.
I love that. They don't even have anyone on the other end. You know what? So where our kids, like my parents died like 2 years ago. So my kids go to a place called Good Grief, and they just put this payphone in there, and it's like an old school payphone. And they just were like, one day my daughter was crying. She was like, I really miss Mimi and Pops. And they said, well, go call them. And I was like, what? It was like brand new that week. And they have it set up, and you can call them and then just talk on this payphone that's not really connected to anything. So I guess that's a similar
check. This is incredible. This is absolutely fantastic. It's called in Wikipedia they call it a wind phone.
Wind phone. Okay.
Yeah, kaze no denwa is an unconnected telephone booth in Japan where visitors can hold one-way conversations with deceased loved ones.
That's what they did at Good Grief. That's what happened.
Absolutely incredible.
I mean, I've got a lump in my throat just thinking about it. You know, I just think it's such a wonderful idea, and it's so simple. And I've actually thought, because my kids, I mean, I've got all my kids are grown up, and they have stressful times with their own kids. You know, my grandchildren, what have you. And I've often thought it'd be nice to have that phone up there in my little section where they can go up there and just let off steam.
I feel like this is what every town needs, one of these, for the teenagers, for the people who want, like for anything. Like, you know, we should do that as an art installation in town.
I want to make one.
Anyone in town wants to help us.
I want to make one with my name on it.
We'll
so
it
like,
artistically.
if anything ever happens to me, the kids can be like, Dad, like this stuff happened to me and I need your help. Right? Like,
I need some money.
But that, you know, literally 2 weeks ago at Good Grief, they did this. And I was like, what is this? And our littlest got she called and she talked. And I was like, that was like the most amazing thing.
Yeah. And
so that's so funny that you would bring that up.
Yeah. I just watching, I think it might have been on, it's a documentary on Netflix or something, or Unsolved Mysteries or something. And they just said that these people they talk to, and they go back regularly, like once a week, every Monday, they just go back to the phone and, hello, dear, how are you? I had a great week. And just chat. I just think it's absolutely incredible.
That's just beautiful is what it is.
Yeah. I might do that here, just so it's there.
Yeah.
So the original one was done by, is this like an artist or someone? Kazama Shobo. Wait, the book was published by Kazama Shobo. I think there was someone else that originated it, but there was a book that was written that translated from Japanese. It's called The Phone of the Wind, What I have seen via the phone in the 6 years, and I guess the first one was instituted after a really bad earthquake. So what I have seen via the phone in the 6 years since the earthquake. And so, great. Now I have another book I have to read.
No, I mean, it's like, you know what? Being so like, I'm an artist and a soul art guide and expressive art therapist. And like, all of me is like, every town needs like one on every corner. Like, this is just, and then the energy that gets put into it every time someone picks it up, like that becomes an entity in itself. Like all that energy that gets put. I mean, that's freaking amazing. We need to do this in Morristown.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant.
Instead of all these little libraries, let's do the phones.
Oh yes, yeah. I don't know. Do you have that in England? They have. This is like a complete aside, but here they have like a take a book, leave a book, kind of like small little.
Oh yeah.
Birdhouse
mini libraries or something like that. Yeah, we don't have those here.
Yeah. I place propaganda in them. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I take a book I want to read and then I put one in that has like my own kind of like slant on things. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm kidding.
Okay,
I'm kidding.
So I'm going to ask a question. So I know we were talking UFOs. So I totally believe in UFOs. I feel like all of our kids believe in UFOs. Do you believe in UFOs?
I believe in something. You preface it because I've heard incredible theories recently.
First of all, I think the Tucker Carlson thing with in the center of the ocean is fucking fascinating, and I don't know what I feel about it. But I told you previously, we were talking right before the show today, like I had an uncle who saw things as a weatherman in the Marines, and it was a big enough situation that was recorded on their machines for them to pull him aside and be like, don't tell anyone, and you didn't see anything. They brought everyone in to do that. So I mean, I believe. I don't know. I've never seen it. I don't have visions of it, but I have friends who swear they work with aliens, and tell me where you stand on all that.
I mean, being straight, I've never seen a UFO land. Okay, I've never seen a grey, or I don't think I've seen an alien life form. I have seen what I thought was a cryptid. I've seen a couple of those, but I don't think I've seen an alien.
Can you explain the difference between an alien and a cryptid? I'm not sure. Yeah, I know.
Ooh, crumbs neighbours. Well, an alien. I mean, alien is the word alien is something that is not the same as us, isn't it? So it'd be alien. Alien is normally seen as a grey, reptilian, insectoid, that sort of thing that comes from outer space. And if alien abductions are normally done by the Greys. I always consider the Greys as like the workhorses of aliens, because they seem to come along and they take somebody, and then it's up to what they call the tall whites, or the Anunnaki, who do all the probing and the work on the poor abductee or experiencer. The cryptid is, I would say, it's difficult, because some people say cryptids are like Bigfoot, are interdimensional, which is why we can never find him. But I've always figured that cryptid was something. I always put cryptids with land, forest,
like
fields.
Earth.
Yeah, Earth. Because you never hear somebody saying, there's a Bigfoot going into Woolworths there, or into the town. It's always out in the country or something like that. So I always look at those sort of cryptids as country based, or their own habitat being forest, or that sort of thing. So that's how I tend to look at cryptids and aliens. Aliens are more out of space, cryptids are more down to earth.
So I have done a lot. I've watched a lot of shows on Bigfoot because our son was very into it, and all of our kids are into ghost stories. So that's something that they've all been into that. My kids have all seen my parents. Yeah, like when my parents died, they've all seen them, smelled them, like felt them. They've all in the house. So like that's something that's just very normalized in our house. But we did watch all these shows on the Bigfoot and the cryptid. I guess I would say Bigfoot was what we were watching.
Yeah.
And I found it so interesting when you said that about the idea of being interdimensional, because I just read a crazy article on Bigfoot and about like the idea that they live on a different dimension, but it's like when that dimension meets ours, and that's how you can see them. It's fascinating. Like He has two family members who have, right? Two family members?
Yes, both
Who
of them
have
are
both experienced Bigfoot.
both of them are truckers.
They're truckers who were going across
Yeah.
country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I believe in that.
Mm.
And I think I believe in fairies 100%.
There's nothing wrong with that. You're not alone.
I
You're
love
not
it.
alone. I mean, the fae, fairies, people get the wrong idea of fairies. I think that because Disney really hasn't done as much of a
No,
fairy
they have not.
you know, they tend to think you say fairy to Disney and they just think of Tinkerbell. But of
Yeah.
course, a fairy encompasses a whole group of cryptids. You know, the fair. I mean, your banshee is under the classification of a fairy. Tree spirits are under the classification. Gnomes and goblins are all under the classification of the fae, and people tend to forget that because you've got to be very careful with fairies as well, especially some
Yes.
they're quite mischievous.
Yes,
You know?
always being careful about inviting or walking into a circle.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
yes,
And
100%.
If you're emptying, if you're emptying a bowl of water onto your plants or something, or in your garden, always tell the fairies first. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? Because if you're sat there now, all of a sudden somebody emptied a bowl of water on top of you without telling you it was coming, you'd be pretty miffed, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the fairy would be. So I'm going to join you in that one because I believe in fae folk as well.
Yeah.
I believe the banshees. I do believe in tree spirits. I did have a very strange encounter with now I can never remember if I got the name right. I think it's called a Taranak. And what it is, I believe it's either Russian or Japanese or Chinese. And it's like a demon baby, if you like. I may not have the name right, but I'm pretty sure it's something like a Taranak. And this happened to me when I was about 15, 16. We lived I still live with my parents. We lived in a village not far from where I am now, actually. And next to there was, next to the few houses that I lived in, there was what they call Bluebell Woods. And I don't know the size of the woods at all or anything like that, but you could constantly hear screams coming from it, or you'd hear weird stuff. And people would say, do not go into Bluebell Woods. And it was just, and this was in the 80s, you know, and you just thought, oh, okay. Now, me being quite, hey, what the heck, I want to see what's going on. As far as I was concerned, I thought, I'm going to go in there. I'm actually going to go to Bluebell Woods. So I got my torch and, you know, me amateur ghost hunting gear. And I asked for volunteers to come with me, but no, what you?
No way.
Yeah, literally. I thought, okay. Now, I didn't tell my parents where I was going, and they did scold me for that, but that's another story. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Bluebell Woods. So I got my torch and all the rest, and I went into Bluebell Woods, and I sat in the middle of these woods on my own. And it was quite dark, and all of a sudden, I heard this baby crying. And I thought, okay, yeah, we're away from any houses, and that's quite a close cry. So I thought, well, I'll go and have a look. So I sort of worked out where it was coming from, and I got my torch, and I'm going through the thickets and woods, and I could still hear the baby crying. It felt like the further I went into the woods, the further the baby crying was away from me. And then all of a sudden, it just changed direction. And I suddenly heard it from a different part of the woods. I thought, hey. I then decided, okay, I'm going to have a look outside to see if there's any, I don't know, travelers out there or somebody's left a window open. Otherwise, I could be going backwards and forwards in these woods all night. There was nothing around. So I decided, okay, let's go and have a look. So I went this other direction, and then it switched again. And then it got to quite late at night. I thought, I've got to go home because Mum would have to kill me for coming out this late at night, and school night as well. So I thought, okay, and I just kept looking. And everywhere I turned, the crying came from a different place. Anyway, I got home and I got the barracking for staying out too late. And I did a bit of reading later on just to find out what sort of thing it could have been. And it wasn't until quite later on that I read about this demon baby called a Taranak, if I've got that name right. And what this baby does is in the middle of in woods and forests around the world, it imitates a cry. And apparently people who have eventually found the Taranak have disappeared.
Oh my God.
Can
you imagine? You're lucky
Am I
you didn't find
right?
it.
Yeah. So, and of course, you read about people disappearing in woods and forests and things like that, like the David Paulides stuff, 411 Missing. I don't know if you've ever read any of his stuff.
No.
No, not specifically. Yeah,
It's
Tyanak.
Tyanak. That's it. That's it.
Tyanak.
Philippine mythology.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
They had another deception, namely that if a woman died in childbirth, she and the child suffered punishment, and that at night she could be heard lamenting. This
I
was
feel like
called
this is close to Outlander.
Patayanak.
Right?
May the honor and glory be God our Lord's, that among all the Tagalog not a trace of this is left. Yeah, and I guess they had like a banishment or something that they would do. But yeah. Vampiric
There are
creature
so many, I mean, creatures. I mean, I guess you put him under cryptids, or we were talking about the Fae. Like, I feel like when we think that we're the only ones here, it's very egotistical to think that we are the only ones. And that, like, I feel like we have such a power of dissociation that we just don't even see sometimes. And it's until you open yourself up to let it in. Right, then all of a sudden the world opens up for you. But to think that we are not there here, and there aren't aliens, and there aren't cryptids and interdimensional beings and magical beings of any kind is pretty crazy to think like that. If you ask me, I mean, you don't really believe in anything.
Yeah, I agree. Right? I mean, once upon a time. Sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I definitely go ahead.
That's all right. I mean, once upon a time. When somebody was abducted, I mean, now when they talk about abductees and experiences as being an alien abduction by a group of grey aliens, you see, once upon a time when somebody was abducted, they were abducted by fairies. Yeah, and there's a book by Nick Pope, I think his name is, and he talks about when people saw these fairies. That were taking away a child or and then leaving them in the woods the next day or something like that. He wonders, are they actually seeing grey aliens? But because the word grey alien isn't in the Oxford English Dictionary or whatever, they're calling them fairies instead of aliens. Then when the word alien became modern popular culture, that's what we tend to use now. But yeah, people back in sort of medieval times who were kidnapped by fairies, and then when they were found 2 days later in the middle of the woods, babies being found 2 days later in the middle of the woods. There's definitely something going on.
In your estimation, specific to say like UFOs and let me ask you that question is. A lot of people associate UFO with alien. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that always the case for you, or do you think that UFOs and aliens could be treated as separate things?
To me, they've always been the same thing, to be honest.
Okay.
I go by. I mean, there have been UFO landings where aliens haven't been involved. When I think of like Rendlesham Forest. I don't know if you know about that one over here in 1980 in the UK, where it happened over, I think it was 3 nights, Christmas 1980, where UFOs were seen all over the place, all around that area. And this was over 3 nights this happened. And there was one night where the UFO actually landed in the middle of the Rendlesham Forest. And one of the soldiers, I can't remember his name now, actually went up, and if you do Google Rendlesham Forest drawings, you'll see his notepad and what have you. He sketched the symbols that were on the side of the UFO.
What is this?
Yeah.
Oh, Rendlesham.
That's it, Rendlesham Forest. Yeah, it's open to the public, and in the middle they've got a. That's it. That's the old army barracks there.
I think it's funny that a lot of it goes around military. Because when they had a lot of UFO, a lot of presence is around military bases. I think that's interesting.
Absolutely. Well, that what was that one? I think it was in the 80s, where it was over at your neck of the woods somewhere in the States, where this big huge round orb floated above a military camp and knocked out all the power. So for something like an hour, the United States was open to, it couldn't defend itself. If somebody decided to throw a nuke at it, the states wouldn't have been able to defend themselves. And what knocked all the power out was this UAP, this UFO that just floated in the air above the actual power station.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an interesting. So, like recently, I mean, you mentioned Tucker Carlson at the beginning.
Yeah, the Tucker Carlson blew my mind.
Tucker Carlson just gave an interview, and I don't know if you saw it. He talked about how he felt like a lot of the UFO sightings, and again, I don't discount the fact that these things could also be, you know, like you talked about the dynamic between, say, fairies and aliens or something like that. They could just be misclassified in terms of, you know, maybe
not having words for it.
Terminology wasn't available, or just understanding wasn't there, or whatever. But he raised a very interesting idea that a lot of what's recently been talked about, and because it was released effectively under the cover of a lot of other crap happening within the United States, the Defense Department basically released files saying, yeah, there's been UFOs, and we've seen them in the sky. We've also seen them deep in the ocean, and they travel at ridiculous speeds and all this other stuff. And so Tucker put forward this idea that they're essentially energetic. You could either call them energetic beings, or that you could actually call them, crossing over from some other, plane or realm or something like that. What's interesting with his take was,
call it demonic?
He thought it was a very negative thing. He thought it was something that the reason why, and again, this is his more political slant, but the reason why he thought, say like the U.S. government wasn't as forthcoming with this information and had to wait decades to declassify it was it painted the U.S. government and the defense of the U.S. as well as the world in a very poor light. Like you said, these things have a knack for doing things that are indefensible, essentially, right? And it undermines that faith in that defense structure. I mean, like, from your standpoint, from what you've seen, like, is it innocent? Are there nefarious things afoot? I mean, what would your opinion be on that?
There's there's a, not a phenomenon, I can't think of the right word. I can't remember, where we are being watched, where we're like rats in a lab, and they're watching us. I tend to think along those sort of lines, to be honest. I mean, what I've seen, I have seen, in fact, it was about 2 years ago here, because I've got some night vision binoculars. I tend to use them at night so the neighbors don't think I'm spying on them or anything. And what I saw was like it looked like a cube just floating around on its axis. And what was strange was the fact that it moved and then stopped and then just moved in a completely different direction. And that, that's probably the sort of thing that that's the sort of thing I've seen. And I just kind of think we're like rats in a lab. What will we do? What would we do if they did this? Or
it's like a huge Hunger Games.
Yeah. Could be. Well, I'm just wondering, let's make it rain over the desert. Let's see how they react. You know what I mean? I just can't help thinking that we are part of some sort of experiment, maybe something like that. That tends to be how I look at it. And I think what's happening is, over time, more and more people, as we were saying earlier, are becoming clued into this and a bit more clued up as to what's actually going on. I also think that we, as a race on the planet, I think we are being slowly manipulated, if you like. So when disclosure, when disclosure finally gets here and they land in the White House lawn, we'll be ready for it. I think, let's face it, if a UFO had landed at, I don't know, President Dixon's front garden back in the 60s or whatever, everybody would have just shit themselves and ran away.
Right.
But they need to make sure, so they use like the mainstream media, if you like, because there's more documentaries now on UFOs than there used to be. And I think we are being slowly manipulated into accepting that, yes, because now, of course, they're saying there are UAPs out there. We do need to be more aware. But they're not saying enough at the moment to freak people out. They're just saying, yes, we've seen something. We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
They seem to be just doing it in stages. I mean, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be around when it finally does happen and a UFO does land and say, hey, everyone, you know, I don't think I'm going to be around when that happens, unfortunately. But I do. I think as a population, I think mankind is being manipulated very slowly through mainstream media, mainly.
Now I want to go watch John Carpenter's They Live, because that's absolutely.
Well, that's a theory among a lot of my conspiracy theory friends, like who this idea that media comes out to get you prepared for what's going to happen.
Yes.
So, like the movie The Matrix, or I don't know what it says with the movie Idiocracy.
I was just, but hold on, that's not even a conspiracy theory anymore, because back in the 70s and 80s, especially during the Cold War, the United States and the CIA already admitted to seeding certain things within Hollywood. They specifically commissioned films.
And why are we on superhero films everywhere? Like right now, everything is Marvel, DC. I don't know what they're getting us ready for portal-wise or ability-wise, but you need to look back at the movies that are being fed to us, because it's like it gives us this ability to, like, okay, what's the plan here, right? Like, but you have to kind of have that in your mind as you're looking at what's going out. Unfortunately, we were just talking about Idiocracy, and I was saying, do you think they planted that so that when the day comes, have you seen the movie Idiocracy?
I don't think I have. No.
Oh, yeah.
You
got to see it.
Actually, what's funny is if you watch the open meeting of the president in that film addressing Congress, you might be reminded of a meeting of Parliament. Believe it or not, it is an interesting scene. But I'm sorry, we cut you off. You were
I know, I didn't
something.
mean to. I just got on that.
I was going to say, I think one of the first films that really impacted through mainstream was when the film When the Earth Stood Still, with the spaceship, was it the big giant robot thing called Gort?
Yep. And
the other and the guy who played the alien said the world leaders need to take care of the Earth. We don't. It's not right that we should suffer on our planet because you can't run your planet properly. That was basic gist of When the Earth Stood Still, and that had a real impact on everybody. That did, because everybody suddenly thought, oh yeah, oh, blimey, yeah. You know, because sometimes dramas do that sort of thing, or films. They do. That was one that, like the first one that I remember, that actually made people think, yeah, that's a good point. And you have to wonder why. You know, why did they put that out there? Did they need a film to tell us to look after the planet? You know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
My first UFO movie was the Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Love it.
It's such a good movie.
With your involvement in UFOs, are you going to visit different places where UFO sightings have taken place? Is it more just kind of like an academic curiosity where you're just kind of researching it?
It's a bit of everything at the moment. I mean, by the time, I just moved house and everything, so everything's been a little bit up in the air. It's all settled down now. It's pretty much settling down. And but my intention is, I want to go to Rendlesham Forest. I want to go there. I want to see it for myself. I know it was 40, 50 years ago. I also want to go to other places that have had real big UFO encounters. There was a big one over in Wales in the early 80s as well. I think South Wales or West Wales, all along there. There was witness. It happened again over several days, and several witnesses all saw the same thing. And these witnesses have never actually met each other, but and that was the other thing, was the actual UFO landed next to a school during the daytime. And of course, all the kids all ran across the playground. Oh, look, all pointing to this spaceship and this alien, or these two figures that were stood outside it. Of course, the teacher, no, come on, boys, come back in. And they're only about, I don't know, 10, 12, 9, whatever. And then, of course, teachers themselves saw this UFO and these aliens on the field, thinking, oh my God. So everybody went in and they got the kids to draw what they saw. Of course, they all come out with exactly the same type of drawing. You know, it was crayon and things like that, but they all had the similar figures in the right place.
I've seen a story on this. I've seen this one has been on one of the documentaries because I saw a story on that. It was on one of the documentaries on the History Channel, and they focused on that, and they showed all the drawings so you could see.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I believe there's another documentary on the BBC 3 or BBC 2 or one of those. It's just come out today, so I don't know. You get BBC in you get BBC America, right, or something.
Do we have I don't even know.
Yeah, we can definitely get BBC, or I can find it somewhere else in another way. Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who think that these extraterrestrial beings, or wherever they're originated from, that they've already made contact with the higher ups within our society, right? Like they've essentially made their presence known, and there's already some kind of parlay or correspondence happening. Do you like ballpark it for me? Do you think that that's something that's likely, or what?
Yeah, very much. I think that there is like a I think they call it like a student exchange. I think for every person that's abducted on Earth, we have probably got one of their aliens for the same reason, to study. That's what I believe is going on.
That's super interesting.
That's so creepy to me. That reeks so creepy.
All right.
To me. Like, what?
Who do you think the alien is? That's what I want to know. Like, if there was a name, if you had to ballpark who
the lizard person is. Now we're talking lizard people. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, who's your prime minister now? He could definitely be an alien.
Oh my God. Sunak.
Yeah, Sunak. Yeah, he could definitely be an alien. Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab's probably a freaking alien.
Oh yeah, of the World Economic Forum.
Yeah. This is something that I think is totally interesting from the standpoint of, I think tons of people have had those moments, at least, where
Bill Gates could be an alien.
Yeah, totally. But I think tons of people have had those moments where they've seen something, they just don't know what it is, right?
Yeah.
Or something feels totally off.
Especially when they look to the sky, and they see some form of blinking lights or something like that. I think lots of people have had those experiences. I think many people are afraid or worried of what the cultural or societal backlash would be if they come out with it.
I think it's a lot better now. I mean, there's one thing good about social media. I mean, if you take away all the people that abuse the system, it is actually pretty good in that you've now got proper groups. There's alien abduction groups on there, closed private groups, obviously, and things like that. I mean, I've spoken to people who are experiencers. I've actually had just private conversations they've been very nice, and they've told me what they went through. And some of them suffered with PTSD for months afterwards. And one guy actually described it to me as beyond fear. He said you're in bed 1 minute and you wake up and it's icy cold, you're naked, you're on a steel table, feels like a table, and you're just looking round at this bright shining room, and you haven't a clue where you are. And then when this figure does look at you, one guy said to me, he said, "You do not have the right to do this." And apparently this alien, who didn't actually use his mouth, he used telepathy, said, "I have every right. I have permission." And of course that means
oh my God.
And then he didn't want to tell me what they did to him afterwards, but I had a pretty good idea of things I'd read. So, and one person, obviously I can't give names or anything like that, but one person was telling me that they'd had an operation in their, between their thumb and their fourth finger, isn't it? Fourth finger, because they'd been tagged. Yeah, they'd actually had something put in, and when they had it removed, about, I think they said about 3 months later, there was another one in there, but this one had been put deeper into the actual hand itself. So it was quite frightening what some of these people have gone through. There was one, I mean, I can tell you what they told me, I just can't tell you names, but there was one couple, and I felt really sorry for them. Throughout their life, the mother, I believe, was an experiencer, and she was always going through hell. She looked like hell. It nearly broke up her marriage, but her husband was actually a really decent guy, and he stood by her and he believed her. And then one day it stopped. It literally just stopped, nothing. And they thought, at last, it's over. And then one morning, getting their kids to school, their daughter came downstairs and said, "Mummy, there was a small grey man in my room last night, and then I fell asleep." Of course, she's going through exactly what her mother went through. Oh, that's quite frightening, really.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it's like there was a guy, I don't know if you've ever heard of John Mack.
John Mack.
No.
Google. I've got a couple of his books, and he's dead now, unfortunately. But he was another writer. He was a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and his books, which were written in the 70s, still ahead of their time now, and they were interviews with abductees. And what he found was, when he was, in fact, there's some interviews with him on YouTube, and they're really interesting. And he stands by his work. And they said, "Do you think these people are crazy?" And he said, "Well, all right, let's say they are crazy. They still need help. They're still suffering. You know, maybe they're not being abducted. Maybe this is all in the mind. But whatever it is, they're suffering. And we have to look at it like that. And if somebody's actually going to believe what they're saying to them, then that's got to help them." And I thought, fair play to you, mate. You know, and the book is actually fascinating. Is that the one, Abduction? Is it called?
Yeah,
Abduction?
this one's Abduction, and kind of like the background. John E. Mack, who was a MD doctor, has investigated nearly 100 cases of alien abduction and has conducted hundreds of hours of interviews and treatment. He takes his clients' accounts seriously, and in Abduction, he makes clear why he believes their testimony may transform the foundations of human thought as profoundly as did Copernicus's proof that the Earth is not the center of the universe.
What?
Yeah.
Incredible.
I put this on my Amazon already. It's already on.
It really is a good book. I mean, I couldn't put it down, to be honest with you. It's one of those books, that was it. I was in. I think I finished it in about 2 days. You know, it literally is, but unputdownable. But
so you mentioned earlier, like stories or movies or whatever that you like first encountered this idea of like UFOs and stuff like that creatively. So I completely like memory hold this until recently. I watched this film like multiple times. I can't even believe like I forgot about this. So Fire in the Sky is the account of Travis Walton.
Yeah.
And he actually wrote an autobiographical book about the experience called The Walton Experience. And this is about an actual abduction that happens out in the woods in, where was it?
Lots of trees. Sorry.
Yeah. Where the heck was this?
The White Mountains.
In the White Mountains.
I don't know where that is.
In Arizona. He was a logger in Arizona, Snowflake, Arizona. Yeah. In 1975. And what's crazy is most people will watch that film and they'd be like, "Oh, this is a great, fictional account of an abduction or whatever." And you're like, "Oh no, this is based off the dude writing his account about how he was literally taken and then returned several days later," which is incredible.
I think I would rather have an encounter with Faye.
Yeah.
I'm all good with cryptids. I'm all good with Faye. I'm not that shit freaks me out.
Yeah.
Because you know what freaks me out the worst was when you said, "No, we have permission." Like that, like who the fuck is giving you permission, right? Like
that's why. Yeah, that's why I was saying when you were asking earlier about what do I think going on. Someone somewhere on this planet, very high up with very deep pockets, there's some sort of exchange going on.
That's
that's
so I'm not ungovernable.
gotta be fucking Bill Gates.
It's gotta be Bill Gates. Gotta be.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what was interesting about the Travis Walton case, there was a documentary, I think it's on Amazon Prime. I can't remember, it's a while since I've watched it. But the solid evidence that happened didn't come to light till about 30 years later, when an investigator went up to where it originally happened, and all the trees that it happened to were still there, but none of the on like the circle inside, if you like, where the abduction happened, nothing has ever grown in that area since. And when they took a sample of bark, there was actually found an unknown substance on it, and that was the first time that solid evidence actually came up. I mean, the authorities they threw everything at Travis Walton to make him retract his story. And fair play to him, he didn't, and I'm glad he didn't. You know.
Oh my God! I mean, it's just such a big, I mean, to think that there isn't anything out there is wow.
That's like taking a spoonful of the ocean and saying, no, there's no fish in there.
Yeah.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. I love it.
And actually, interestingly enough, like a lot of people are very quick to make, myself included, make wide sweeping assumptions about things that have not been explored, right? So like a perfect example being like as big as the ocean is, the universe is literally many orders of magnitude larger than the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
And we've only explored a very small percentage of the ocean on our own planet.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
That was 5%, something silly like that. I know it's really small.
Yeah. And what's incredible too is the US government declassifies this information, and there's some of the ones like during the Cold War, for instance, they literally had, I think it was like 80 or 90% of the world's oceans sonar buoyed. So the entire world's oceans, we had like 80 or 90% sonar buoyed so that we could tell whenever a Russian, maritime vehicle went somewhere. You can't tell me that they don't have all kinds of crazy shit like data about stuff that was moving around, right? Like,
Totally.
I think I saw something similar to that as well. Yes, I remember something like that.
Yeah. So this is looks like a TV series about Travis Walton's story.
This is on Prime,
or at least maybe it was only one. Oh no, it's 2 episodes. So I guess it was like a mini series.
Oh, I'll have a look at that.
Yeah, 1975, 6 loggers in Arizona witnessed their crewmate's abduction. Travis Walton's story became an international sensation and ripped apart a small town. 4 decades later, shocking new evidence reveals the true story behind Fire in the Sky.
Yeah. Well, he was a bit upset with Fire in the Sky, wasn't he? Because he actually said that it didn't happen like that, because they wanted to, or there's somebody who would put in money in, said they wanted to make it into a horror film. And he said it wasn't really like that. There was nothing nasty. He said, if anything was nasty, it was probably me, because I was shit scared of what these aliens were going to do to me. Because he said he picked up some glass tube and threw it, and they ran away. I remember rightly. I mean, have you heard about the Carl Higdon case?
No, I haven't.
Oh, that's a quick Google.
Back on Google. I am learning so much today. I'm like, I love it. I love it.
That's good. Now that's another fascinating case. It's the Carl Higdon one. I actually did one of my Mark's Unexplained World on it because it was so incredible. He was going to shoot some elk so he could eat, and this figure was suddenly stood in front of him. So out of sheer panic, he went to shoot it, and the bullet actually bounced off like a glass wall that was in front of him. And after various things had happened, he got abducted, and the evidence was this bullet that was lying on the floor, all bent up, where it had actually hit a glass wall or a solid wall. Yet he was in the woods. There was no solid wall. Yeah, Carl Higdon. Awesome one. That's a really good. I'm surprised they've not made a film of that as well, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, it looks like they did. Did they write a book about it?
Yes, there is a book. I think his wife wrote it. I've not read it myself. I think it's only available at your end, your stick of the woods. So
it seems like so much has happened in the 70s and 80s. I feel like
Well,
we've been talking about a lot of abductions and things
mm,
that kind of happened in
yeah.
the 70s and 80s.
Well, the first recorded one, of course, was Betty and Barney Hill, 66, I think. That was the first I think was the first recorded one. Betty and Barney Hill alien abduction. If you, the film of that, dramatized film of that is available on YouTube, and it's James Earl Jones who plays Barney. The acting is just superb. Yeah, I mean, if you like sci-fi drama, James Earl Jones was a good actor anyway. But my God,
the first link I bring up is from CNN, and obviously they go, their UFO abduction story was obviously about racism. Here it is. Hold on, let me pull it up. This is how Betty and Barney Hill's alien abduction story defined the genre.
This is the history.
Yeah. But I mean, I'd say if you do get the chance to watch the film, it is brilliant. It's only about hour and 20 minutes, but it's a really good film. Because Barney and Betty were both put under hypnosis, and there's recordings on YouTube of them under hypnosis.
You know what's brilliant?
The pain in their voices of what was happening to them, and James Earl Jones does it brilliantly.
I'm going to be doing
incredible.
All week. I have a light week. I'm going to be watching and reading all week because I'm like, but you know, the alien thing freaks me out.
I have to run out. Go
like
ahead.
the alien thing totally freaks me out. I'm good with the more earth-based stuff. And yeah, I feel like maybe we're on the same, like at least we're on the same planet. Even if it's interdimensional. Like, I don't know if that's how it works. But so can I ask you a question in the other direction? Or go ahead and say what you wanted to say first.
I was going to say, there are some counts of or records of alien abduction that I found out has actually been sleep paralysis. You know,
all right. Yeah.
Woke in the figure in the room, and they talked about what this figure has done to them in the room. And of course, they found out that it's probably sleep paralysis. A lot of people who fear ghosts and spirits in their house, it's been turned out that it's actually been sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis. So I'm a yoga nidra guide, and they talk about when you go into some people will go into a sleep paralysis during a yoga nidra. It's a very rare thing, but it does happen where they completely are like sleep paralysis in the middle of it, and how to pull them out of that if that happens. I'd never heard of it before I started training for yoga nidra. I'd never heard of sleep paralysis. Yeah, because the yoga nidra is working on the subtle selves, moving you to that delta state. So through that, you can have people experience sleep paralysis, which is very fucking scary. Really fucking scary. So like they teach you in the training how to bring someone down from that and out of sleep paralysis, because you have to be aware that it could happen. I was actually going to change topic for a minute, unless you had something more you wanted to say.
Go right ahead.
I was going to say, as a medium, have you worked a lot with like that point of death, like what it is to experience it, what's on the other side, just this idea of like what the process is?
No, I don't. No, I haven't, to be honest. I mean, when I've done readings for people, I use, fair enough, I'll show you, I use oracle cards. I use these.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love it.
They're brilliant. I mean, I went for these, one, because obviously they had a UFO theme to them or an alien theme to them. And most people that know me know that, of what I like. But I also got them because of the illustrations. I wanted something that sort of said Mark, because I'm a bit, and that's why I went for them. And when I've done readings for people and it's been from their loved ones, see, I can never predict what's going to come through. I have had people either on Zoom or in this room, and they say, I want to have a reading from my mother, father, whatever. And I always say, I can't guarantee that, but we'll see what we can pick up. And 9 times out of 10, I pick up a spirit that's not even that they don't even know, that can actually tell them what they've done and what they're going to do, and what they should do and things like that. So it's but I've never been in touch with the other side per se, so I've never sort of seen what it's like or anything like that. So no, that is a mystery to me, to be honest with you.
I remember when
so I can't help you on that one.
I remember when my parents died, I had a lot of lucid dreaming, and like I would be meditating, and I would be sleeping, but I would be like, I knew I wasn't totally asleep, like something was going on. And I know my parents visited me at one point and kind of showed me pictures of what it is like out there, and they told me about the experience, and then they're like, we'll see you in a little while, and then they just disappeared because they're like, don't worry about us, we got to go explore. And then they came back, a year or two later, right? It was like a year or two before they had like visited me again. But it's such an interesting to think about. Like when you think about spirits, when you think about interdimensional beings, when you think about aliens, when you think about all of these different manifestations of energy, because that's how I'm going to put it. Like we are manifestations of energy, you know. Just the other day, someone was saying spirits like that can be echoes of emotion or echoes of a trauma. And like one of the other books I've worked on with soul shamanism talks about like deep memories of trauma as almost like demons, right? But it's like that experience of that trauma that then kind of builds and builds and builds into somewhat of a spiritual entity. And so it's interesting if you just think of we're all just energetic expressions of something. And so I suppose if you have like an open mind, like I think if it came to aliens, I would totally exude fear. Would you? I think I would exude. Anything else, I'm okay, I think, for the most part.
That's a good question. I think I would be like curious but guarded, right? I'm torn because there are a lot of people out there that default to skepticism, not skepticism from the standpoint of like not believing. I mean, there's a lot of people that are out there that aren't believers, but a lot of people that do openly discuss it, they're skeptical from the standpoint of they don't see that we would be visited for like an altruistic reason, right? Like, or a mutually beneficial reason, right? Like,
well, if you have to if they have permission, that doesn't.
Well. Then again, I mean, like the other thing is that also it's a self-interest bias too. So when you see the awful shit that people are capable of, I think sometimes you project that onto other beings, whether it be animals or whether it be energetic beings of other kind of existence. And so I don't know. I think I would be guarded, but at the same time, I don't think I would immediately.
You wouldn't immediately judge it.
Like run the other way.
It would be
like
so different.
Yeah.
But then again, so would seeing a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Right. Or so would seeing something that's smaller, right? Or a ghost. It's not of us.
I mean, in the back of my mind, I would be like, okay, like I would be like, all right, don't allow them to do any experimentation, right? Like, like let's have a parlay, right? Like, and let's
I don't know
talk,
if you would have that opportunity,
or like hand signals or something. But like, I don't like being. I'm going to use a double negative. I don't like being not in control, right?
Yeah,
and so
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, not every alien abduction has been negative. There have been some abductions that have been very positive. I mean, I've spoken to people who have who get abducted regularly just to go on a flight on a spaceship. Sorry, I'm really being a bit derogatory there, but it really has been a positive experience for them, and they're happy to be abducted again. And then, of course, you get the darker ones. So I think you're right. I mean, I've got to be honest. I like to experience everything at least once, so I can say I've done it. As far as I know, I've not been abducted, but I'd happily let happen once, just so I can say yes, I've been abducted.
Yeah. that's another aspect to it too, is like, you know, do they have the technology to just like like brain wipe you. I mean, like
Oh, like if you were abducted,
us-
you wouldn't even know it.
us as a bunch of just like, you know, crudely intelligent monkeys. I mean, like we have chemicals to like wipe people's memory. So
What
you know,
what does an alien
why
have?
wouldn't they have something? You know,
Something. Oh, I feel like it's like the movie Men in Black, where it's just like look away.
well, yes, yeah, or something.
I mean, it was in a movie. Isn't that what we were talking about?
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And that
I was
movie has
always-
its own Matrix.
I was hoping for the. I mean, I saw the first one because I quite like Tommy Lee Jones. Actually, he's a very good actor.
Mm.
But I was disappointed that they turned it into a comedy.
Yeah.
You know, when I
Mm.
first heard they were doing a film, I thought, oh, actually, this would be quite dark. It would be quite. And then when I found out they got Will Smith, it was going to be a comedy. I was a bit disappointed in that. You know, that's just me. Though. I mean, they smashed the box offices and it did very well, and I did enjoy it. But I must confess, I was hoping that they would just do something like a serious take on it, like they did Close Encounters or The Fourth Kind. I don't know if you've seen that. Was it The Fourth Kind?
I haven't seen that one.
That's a good film. I enjoyed that. The thing is, he's been very. It's all about the missing people of Nome, so, around Alaska, where people kept disappearing. Over I think 40 people have disappeared over something like 20-year period, and of course they've never been found. And so what the director did, he did this film with Judge Vonovich, whatever her name is, and it starts off with them saying this film is based on true accounts. Basically, what they've done is they've made the people that disappeared, they've made it fit the narrative of alien abduction. It's really cleverly done, you know. And Jovovich, or whatever her name is, actually plays the part of a psychiatrist. And the real psychiatrist, who is played by an actress, is being interviewed documentary style as the film goes on. It's really cleverly done.
Ooh, what is the name of this one?
As The Fourth Kind. When it first came out, everybody actually thought, "Oh my God, this is what really happened." And then he got a bit of a slap wrist because he got accused of false advertising or not putting telling people it was a true story when it wasn't a true story. They just wrote.
Sounds like a good movie.
I mean, it's a bit more. That's it. Yeah, The Fourth Kind. It's a bit more, if you like, scary for alien abduction films. And the other good actor, is it Bill Paxton? No, I can't remember his name now. Gone, but you'll see it on there. Another good actor in it. And there are some real
Will Patton.
That's him, yeah.
Yeah.
There is some good brown trouser moments in it, and I really enjoyed it. But if you take it for what it is, and just a good sci-fi yarn with a bit of horror thrown in, I think it's quite enjoyable. And I did actually like it.
Yeah.
So, did you want to? I see you brought something up.
No, I was gonna say I kept looking for it because I totally forgot the actual name of it, but Operation Mockingbird is the CIA operation that literally there was a Senate hearing and the CIA on the floor of the Senate goes, yeah, we've done movies and we've bankrolled certain things and censored scripts and all kinds of other stuff in order to
get the population ready,
introduce concepts to,
so why
to
all
the American
superhero
public.
Movies now?
Well, no, who knows? I mean, it could also be just
nothing
flashy lights entertaining
I don't know.
the dumb chimps. But I do you want to like keep on the UFOs or do you want to ask something else?
Gonna ask, we were kind of talking like just being a conspiracy theorist. We have our own conspiracy theories, which are oftentimes found out to be true. What would you say are some of the biggest conspiracy theories that you hold or believe or are working towards understanding?
I suppose the one that is on most people's lips, but everybody's too scared to talk about, is the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, we've had some issues.
What aspect of it?
Well, pretty much all of it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I was. If you're going to fake an illness, it's got to be a kind of coronavirus, because there are hundreds of different types.
Sure.
And coronavirus has been around for a long time. I don't know. I mean, things in China were pretty bad when it first came out, and the States was doing quite well. And then all of a sudden, China did this, and they released this pandemic or this bats thing, and then China got over it very, very quickly. And then, of course, the States went into lockdown, or the rest of the world went into lockdown. And China suddenly made lots and lots of money out of it. And there's certain people around the world who have really cashed in on this coronavirus.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk about the Great Reset and things like that, about the fact we've killed off, over 100 million people who died of this coronavirus. And there were doctors out there who were being paid bonuses if they put on the death certificate, died of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And they would, the other thing that I did notice, there was lots of obviously famous people died of COVID-19, but they didn't die of COVID-19. They may have died because they had a heart attack. However, they were putting on the death certificates had COVID-19. So when the news report was saying, such and such died of a heart attack, but he also proved positive for COVID-19, you suddenly think, hold on, why even tell us that? You know what I mean? I just think there was too much scare on it. And the rules that they were trying to impose on people were just ridiculous. You know, you could sleep with your wife, but you can't play tennis with her. Do you know what I mean? The whole thing was just a complete bollocks. I behaved myself. I didn't go out with placards, and I thought, well, you know, if I've got to wear a mask, either that or a £300 fine, which is what it was over here, I'd rather wear the mask. And I did, simply because I didn't have the money, you know. But I don't know. I just, and we got over it very quickly, you know. I mean, was it? I don't know. I'm just very suspicious about the whole thing, to be honest with you.
Wait, what do you think the impetus was for, you know, again,
Lockdown.
in the vein of me being measured because we are on YouTube. So,
we did get a video taken down for a story.
Which I get stuff. I get stuff taken down on YouTube all the time, and I wear it as a badge of honor. So don't worry about it. But yeah. What do you think the impetus was? I mean, what do you think the motivation or the end result was?
Money, I suppose. I mean, that's normally, isn't it? I always think when you're looking at a conspiracy, the first thing you have to ask is who's going to benefit from this. And I just can't help thinking that China was going to benefit from this, because their economy grew tenfold when the rest of the world was on lockdown. You know. Of course, the other thing is that the injections, the cure, or whatever they called it, they talked about microchipping and things like that. I mean, it's possible. It is certainly possible. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't want you getting taken down.
Well, there's an interesting. So I used to be friends with someone who was very religious, Catholic, and though he would talk about like the sign of the beast and all of that kind of conspiracy, but he was talking about at one point they had, before COVID happened, they had that thing where it was like a patch for vaccines, and he was saying how that was the mark of the beast, and he was bringing that into focus with the CERN. Do you know about the CERN? Where is that? Sweden? Is that in Sweden? It's not Sweden.
No. It's in. Hold on, I'll look it up.
He was connecting the CERN with the patches for vaccines, the mark of the beast, and everything else. And then when COVID happened, something happened where everything kind of pulled it together and made sense for him. And we were having this big, long conversation about it. But
I mean, that's probably the conspiracy that I'm sort of read up on mostly. I do have a favorite conspiracy, but I don't actually believe in it. My favorite conspiracy is the flat Earth.
Oh, all right. That the Earth is flat?
Yeah. I mean, was it 60% of Americans now believe that the Earth is flat or something like that?
There is a large percentage.
Amount.
Geneva, Switzerland.
Geneva, Switzerland. Yeah, with where the CERN is. So the flat Earth is interesting. I was just showing Matt a video on flat Earth because they were talking about how flat Earth the theory of flat Earth is that there's a firmament and that there's an ocean beyond it or something like this. And so this woman who's
the ice wall, and then beyond that there's meant to be more land.
Yeah, and so this one was talking about it being not necessarily like a firmament with like an ocean. It was more of like a crystalline liquid.
Yeah.
I don't know where I stand on any of it because I know I don't really, when they talk about the moon landing, I know, Matt, you've told me it's all true, right? Like you totally, he's told me things about the moon landing, but when I see it, I'm like that. I don't know if I believe it.
No, hold on. I always reserve skepticism. I'm a very skeptical person. The moon landing thing, there's been enough that I think that you have to remember the moon landing happened during the time of the Cold War. You had all kinds of other political crap that was happening, like Operation Paperclip, where they were essentially emigrating Nazis from Nazi Germany into South America and the United States. I mean, NASA is basically founded on the V2 Nazi rocket platform. Like that's basically what the first shuttle missions were, or the first rockets were. So I don't necessarily think that the things that have been picked apart in the past are wrong, because they've already had people that were publicists who went on record to say, oh, well, the photos that we took weren't great, so we used publicity photos that were mock-ups as a result of it. And from my standpoint, regardless of whether or not, the moon landing is correct or whatever, for me, where it really sits is I don't trust government. So when the government says anything is like the way it was, immediately I'm like, okay, I don't believe you. And now I go from that standpoint, right? Flat Earth, I'm not sold on Flat Earth.
I'm not, to be honest. I'm not sold on, but I admire their conviction.
There is a lot of conviction to Flat Earthers.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I really do admire that their thought. I mean, there's Flat Earth cons, isn't there? There's meetings all round the earth, all over the they have big meetings and things like that. And I when I first heard about it a few years ago now, I just thought that joke, that can't be. And then I looked into it. I thought, my God, this is real stuff. This really is. I bought my son for a bit of a gag. He was after a clock for his kitchen when they moved, and I got him a flat Earth clock. It's basically the flat Earth with the clock. Just a joke for him. But I do admire them, and they don't care what you think of them. Hey, that's it. This is what I think. So I do admire them for that. But that's probably my favorite conspiracy, because I watched the documentaries, and there's loads.
I was gonna say, there's a documentary that everyone points to. And I think I watched part of it, and they even try to shoot a laser.
That's right.
Far away to show that there's no arc, right? Remember I showed you that, but you had just counted it.
No.
When you looked at the laser, because you said that it's a certain amount of distance.
No, the actual experiment shows that there's deflection, right? And so the flat earther then has to essentially disprove the experiment or whatever. And I'm not sure they actually ever get to that point. Not to mention the fact that I think the documentary is set up to discredit the theory. Yeah. If I had to put money on it.
Is it Beyond the Curve? Is that what it's called? Beyond the Curve?
Yeah,
that might be. Yeah.
If I had to put money on it, I don't think flat earthers will be vindicated or anything like that.
No.
But
I agree.
My money would be on them unearthing something that
equally as big,
maybe tangential or related to it, that has been either a lie or a conspiracy or something like that comes from it. And so anyone who wants to get together and actually
get curious,
good experiments and figure shit out and just try stuff, I'm more than, I would rather them do that than sit on the internet and
just preach.
Or create deep fakes for a living or something, right? I think it's definitely more productive than some other aspects of things.
I mean, it's one thing to have a conviction and have a belief, but to actually experiment, to actually do something about it, to try and prove to yourself and to everybody else, to actually get off your backside and do something. I agree. Which is one of the reasons why I do admire them.
Yeah,
But,
it's
hey, I believe in aliens, so
yeah, and again, I always kind of I always hedge a little bit because I've been proven wrong enough times to know that I don't have everything figured out, right?
yeah,
And so that's why I asked you the question about kind of, do you differentiate between, say, like UFOs and aliens? Because I also think we have a problem just with humanity in general in that, and you could draw any parallel that you want. Like, a perfect example would be the analogy that exists within the Tower of Babel story in the Bible, right? Where everyone emerges speaking different languages. I think a lot of people now, even within their own countries, speak different languages, even though the words sound the same, because they just don't understand each other. And there's an aspect of these things, whether it be, phenomenon like ghosts or UFOs, or whether it be COVID and other things, where I think people just aren't talking the same language. And so they aren't able to really kind of uncover that truth that's at the core of what they're all kind of circling, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah. I agree. But I think someone somewhere it's like hiding in plain sight, isn't it? They keep it like that. Keep people disagreeing, so that way they'll avoid the bigger picture, or they won't see the bigger picture. I think it's there's probably something along that vein. Keep them fighting so they'll ignore us.
Oh, there's a meme I'm a big fan of because there's a lot of truth in it. It's actually has different versions all throughout the entire world, and it's funny that you're a Brit and we're American and we're talking about this, because it goes something like, the powers that be would rather a civil war happen than a revolution, right? At least then they have an opportunity to be on the winning side when the Civil War happens versus the revolution, because all the people wearing wigs, usually it doesn't end up very good for them at the end. Right. That's I think a lot of people talk past other people. And so I'm a big believer in, before you even start to, determine whether or not you have parallels or not, you have to kind of understand the other person's language and where they're coming from in order to be able to have a good conversation. Because if you don't, I mean, what are you ultimately doing? You're just kind of like screaming in your language and they're screaming in theirs, and nothing really comes of it.
Nowhere. Yeah, that makes sense, actually. I think you should stand for president next.
Yeah. I actually, in fact, in that in the Flat Earth documentary, there was one of the higher ups at NASA goes to the Flat Earth meetings and conventions and presents and has a dialogue, because they basically said, if you shut them out, they will take that as like almost like an indirect proof that they're on to the truth, right? And like that's going to push them. So you have to open a dialogue with them and have a conversation and involve yourself in the science and be like, okay, well, this is why this is happening. This is why we think this is happening, and come to a collaborative conclusion. Because ultimately, if you are correct, right, there's no harm done. Maybe you spend a little extra time and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, you end up getting, people on your side because they see things your way.
And then you have,
I know exactly where you're going on this one.
What's the guy's name from the Cosmos?
Yeah. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, and then on the other side, you have Neil deGrasse Tyson, who went on an interview with Del Bigtree on the High Wire. And he's supposed to be the voice of reason in the science, right?
Yeah.
And he was totally flipped up. Like how would you explain that? It was, I don't know what the words to use.
No, I mean, he kept coming back to this idea of consensus, right? So
he was awful.
And there's many times in human history where consensus has been
wrong,
dangerously and catastrophically wrong, right?
But he couldn't admit the problem, and it was a COVID thing, so that's why he was on Dell. He couldn't admit there were problems. It was like, oh well, and he kept going back to the consensus, and so you have moments like these where the conversation, you have one person who's very willing to have the conversation, and then it's just there's no critical thought, there's no critical conversation there, and I think that roadblock comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would imagine you come up against that a lot too with
You get people who will talk because they feel sorry for you. You know, or they. I mean, it's not really an icebreaker. You know, hi, my name's Mark. What do you do? Oh, I study UFOs and aliens.
It's totally an icebreaker.
Right. Okay, well, I can't hang around, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people are pretty good, actually. I think people just people who know me have known me for a long time, and they just accept, oh, this is who he is. Fair enough. I've got my daughter's wedding coming up in about 3 weeks' time, and I've never met any of her in-laws, but she's actually told me I've already warned them about it. So I thought, okay.
Yeah.
So when I do the father of the bride talk, I should be talking about aliens and alien abduction and safe journey home, everyone.
Yes.
I love it.
That's fantastic. Before I forget, I definitely want to pull up the Facebook group that you have. Is that the easiest way that people can get to the podcast and that kind of content for you?
Yeah. I mean, the Mark's Unexplained World. I mean, at the moment, I've got several of forthcoming events already on there in the event section. I've just finished writing and researching my next one, which comes out on Monday, called the Camp Van Dorn Slaughter. In fact, that's another good conspiracy, but we'll leave that for another day. But that is probably the best bet, is to go onto Mark's Unexplained World Facebook group. The podcast is available on pretty much all the podcast platforms, and I've also got a YouTube channel on there. They're all audio though, so you won't have to look at my pretty face for a half hour.
I think, because I've been on your page now for a while. I love what you post. I'm noticing that World UFO Day is coming up.
Oh yeah, July 2nd.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. I look forward to that every year. So that's yes, and that comes. I do a show. I've been doing it. In fact, I did my 100th show about 2-3 weeks ago. So I've been doing it for nearly 2 years. So I'm quite chuffed about that. And yes, this one that's coming up, it comes out every Monday evening, which will probably be Monday afternoon at your neck of the woods. And I love what I do. And it basically, I try and cover obviously the unexplained, but just to give a bit of variety for my listeners and for myself, of course, as researching, I try and put in a few conspiracies. I also put in some medical disasters or man-made disasters and things like that, just to throw in the mix a little bit. And I also try and do a little bit of true crime. I've got a show coming up, which I'm going to be talking about stalkers and the stalking crimes, stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously, it's a terrible crime. It's also very interesting to read about these types of people and why they do what they do. And So I love what I do. I really enjoy it. I love.
We'll have to get Ani on,
Our
because our daughters are all
eldest
about
daughter
true crime.
loves true crime.
We watch Bones now, like nightly.
Her favorite fascination is, I forget what they call them, these women that fall in love with like the serial killer types and the mass murderers.
Oh, because she watches some true crime court things that.
Yeah. Ted Bundy. I mean, he had a string of women after him.
Yeah.
I mean, he was tall, good looking. I mean, he was a model. He'd been in some of these like magazines with shirts and t-shirts. He was a good looking bloke, and he had quite a following. You know? And then you look at like TK, but once they're inside, they suddenly they get letters from hundreds of women wanting to marry them and things like that. For a case I'm working on, not this week, because I'm doing the Camp Van Dorn Slaughter, but the one after that is called The Evil Delusions of Eleanor Williams, and that's a really dark one. It's just about a young teenage girl who caused so much upset online that she accused people of sex trafficking her and raping her and goodness knows what else, that some of these people that she accused, their lives were ruined, absolutely destroyed, and suicide attempts, and it was really dark what she did, and nobody knows why she did it. If you see her in court, she just does that like just normal teenage girl chewing gum. Do you know what I mean? And what on earth? I think she got 8 years in prison, and because of her crimes, they brought in the online bullying law or something.
Yeah.
You know, people couldn't. It was her case that actually sparked it off. It's really dark, and you look at the picture of her, and she's just a normal teenage kid.
Yeah.
You know, but what she actually did was horrific.
Yeah.
But that's a true crime one. So I've got quite a few coming up.
Yeah,
I do enjoy
definitely.
writing.
It's Mark's Unexplained World, right?
Yeah.
Mark's definitely
right.
check it out because you post awesome stuff, and I think we have to get Ani because she loves podcasts.
Yeah,
we're going to get our oldest daughter on your podcast. She would love it.
I was just thinking if someone had a time machine, or if there was a parallel universe where you could like pull Charles Darwin into the present and be like, look, I'd be like, Chuck, look. There's going to be these people that are infamous for killing a lot of other people. And then there's going to be these women that find them very attractive because they've done that and they want to have relationships. He would have been like, yeah, I'm just ripping up everything I ever knew about natural selection. It's gone. It doesn't make any sense anymore. You know,
that's it. Throw it on the fire.
Yeah. Sorry, I got nothing. He's like, I got nothing. Oh, look, we're going on.
It has been awesome. Yeah, no, I have so enjoyed our conversation. Like, I have so enjoyed it. But we need to have him on once a month.
I will come back whenever you want me to, honestly. I love doing this sort of thing. I love talking about this thing as well. So, honestly, just give me a shout. You know, I've only hosted one, maybe two interviews since I've been doing it. I'm not very good as an interviewer. I don't mind being interviewed, but interviewing other people, I'm not very good at it. So,
well, I feel like we just touched the tip of the iceberg. I feel like we just kind of skated over some things.
Oh yeah,
but I feel like there is a lot of
there's more meat to
stuff underneath the surface.
Oh yeah. I mean, before I go on, these interviews, I tend to write a small list of questions and things I might ask. I've only ticked about 4.
Yeah.
So there's plenty there.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right. We do have to run because we have children and there's actually cake. Did we ever get
We do have Father's Day cake.
We do have Father's Day. Yeah, happy Father's Day.
Very nice. No, that's great. Okay. But it's been fantastic talking to you both, and I thank you so much for the opportunity as well.
We really definitely have to have you on again.
Yes, yeah. and we're gonna run the credit song or whatever. Definitely stick around in the green room because we want to chat you up a little bit after this is all said and done. So, you have any final words?
No, I loved it today. I loved it.
All right.
Thank you.
Everyone, if you made it this far, fantastic. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Help us.
It's been a good few hours. Yeah.
Help us with the algorithm if you got something good out of tonight's episode. And this will be up on the podcast too. So definitely sub or follow on the podcast. And with that, we'll be back next Sunday night. So everyone have a good one. Peace.
Check on your mind, it's time to redefine. You're the spiritual quest, leaving the rest behind. Ungovernable, breaking through the status quo. We untamable, watch our spirit elevating consciousness. Yeah, we on the rise. No system can hold us down. We're reaching new heights, breaking through the chains, breaking through the wall. Ungovernable energy, watch the empire fall. Passion in the norm, shedding old beliefs, seeking truth and purpose, finding it.